Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another episode of Factions 101. I'm your host, High Top, and as you can notice, it is on a Friday. And that is what the rest of the Factions 101 episodes are going to be on. They're going to be every Friday now. Now that it's summer, I have more time to do things during the week. And so now they're going to be every Friday. But let's get into the news. Alright, so we have Desecrate MC, a server I covered last week, about them having an upcoming map. A ton of stuff went down. To start off, the map was Ares, which was a Psycho PvP faction, versus Pandillas, versus Royalty, versus Bot Squad. That was basically kind of the map. That's who it was against. Basically, after Grace, Ares managed to raid like F-top 2 through 7 and managed to get enough value to get the number 1 spot. Basically, that solidified their spot at the top. Shortly after this, Pandillas got DQ'd. They basically got DQ'd for staff abuse and faction merging. Basically, Pandillas had a staff member on the Desecrate MC staff team, and basically he kind of helped them with some decisions. The staff claimed that he didn't do anything, but there's proof of him sending F-chat logs, making decisions to benefit Pandillas, and there's some rumors that he might have even spawned in stuff. But then again, Pandillas made an announcement saying that they, had nothing to do with it. The staff member said he was just a Pandillas member. He didn't mean to abuse or anything. But what ended up happening is they were DQ'd for staff abuse and faction merging. And basically, there was a lot of other stuff too. They were lagging the server. They were hopping around factions to try and help them so that they could raid them after. It was all a mess, and Pandillas got DQ'd for it on Desecrate MC. During the map, one of the first days, Skid, we've talked about him for the last 2 weeks. He's reared his head once again. I'm just saying, man, you are involved so much for so much, bad stuff. Basically, what happened is Desecrate MC got DOSed, the same way Cannoning MC got DOSed, and Skid seemed to be involved again. Once the server went down, he went into the Discord and laughed and said a bunch of other stuff. And then as soon as the server went down, he hosted an event on his server, MC Wars. I don't know if he's doing this. I don't know who's, DDoSing these servers. But Skid is just always around. It's hard to believe that he's not involved. He's, made announcements and claims that he's, has nothing to do with anything. But it's just hard to really say that he's not doing anything when he's always involved with all these different things. I don't know. It's hard to believe that he's not, in any way involved. Regardless, though, the map goes on, and basically Ares was F-top 1, and on the last day, Bot Squad tried to, get a cannon up to get rid of them and take their F-top 1 position, and were packed for 3 hours. I don't even think they got a cannon up to shoot, but they were packed out, and basically just ended up, not being able to do anything, which led to Ares winning the map. Shortly after the map, the server got ULUD, and presumably this is because of Pandillas reporting it. There's no proof that said they reported it, but Pandillas were the first to report it, and the owner believes it was Pandillas as well. The owner also believes that Skid got him Tebex banned because they were in a call going over some, earnings and stuff, and I think the owner of Desecrate was trying to, get some advice, and Skid ended up, screenshotting a lot of his Tebex info, and now he is Tebex banned. So that's what the owner thinks. Skid has not said anything about it, but once again, Skid is involved with so many horrible things. It's hard to believe he's not doing anything, you know what I mean? But moving on to Psycho PvP Creeper Realm. This will be the first time we are covering Psycho PvP. Regardless, a faction we were just talking about, Ares, played the map versus Sandfish. So basically, Ares pulled off a huge lead in Grace against Sandfish, and this is mostly because of them owning Dark Zone and Outpost, as those are basically the eco methods on Psycho PvP. Basically, what ended up happening is Ares was originally, Marlboro and IRS, and they were two different factions, and they were truced and they were PvPing together. Basically, what happened is Sandfish, argued to staff to get truces disallowed on Psycho, which ended up happening, and it made it to where IRS merged into one faction, Marlboro. Sandfish then found a way to abuse the roster on Psycho, as it is 5-man roster, or 5-man 12 roster, and it was basically an F flag glitch that they set their faction to joinable, and it allowed people to join their faction, and basically they had an unlimited roster while Ares only had 12. So it was a huge disadvantage to Ares, and Sandfish began to start to catch up to them. Basically, as they were starting to get close to it, all hell broke loose. It was, Sandfish started to DDoS and dox Ares, just to try and do anything to get them out of Dark Zone so that they could control it and hope to win the map. Shortly after this, genuinely almost all of Sandfish, probably I think it was like 8 or 9 people, got banned for doxing, cheating, all at the same time. And this, made it to where there was no more comp left, and Ares ended up, on top and won the map. Alright, and then moving on to Menace MC. Basically a faction, I think their name was Thule, I'm not sure, but they had Isaac and LQ in it. If their name wasn't Thule, I apologize, I couldn't find the specific name in the ticket. But regardless, I'm going to refer to them as Thule. They basically raided someone on the map and got the F-top 1 position. And so obviously they're F-top 1, they're trying to defend their position to win the map. And then what ended up happening is shortly after, they were raided by a faction full of staff members, and the staff members were found to be cheating. And so basically what ended up happening is that faction that raided them, Blockheads, with the staff members, they ended up getting DQ'd for, having staff play with them, and for the staff, cheating and raiding them. It was unfair. Even because of this, no rollback happened. No rollback happened. It was a little odd. I'm not really sure what happened there. But no rollback happened. And then there were polls made to then change how the map was run. They were letting staff members play that, were higher up in perms. Usually you don't do that. This server was a little different. But they're making, polls to say, like, should so-and-so staff be able to play the map, da-da-da-da-da. All that type of stuff. Basically what ends up happening is the map ends early and Blockheads are re-qualified to win, and they end up winning the map. A little odd in my opinion. No rollback happened for Thule, and the staff members ended up winning the map. Then afterwards, after the map was over, the owner jokes that he's going to scam because he doesn't want to get ULA'd. Everybody took this pretty seriously, and there was a lot of stuff going around that he was scamming. However, afterwards he eventually pays up. But it was towards Blockheads. Alright, now on to MC Wars. Basically, the map was an ego side faction named Icy against Pluto. Yes, Pluto is back. It is the faction that, ran comp a couple years ago. They are back in full force. There's no messing around. This is the real Pluto, the real deal. Basically, Pluto pulled up late. They dropped some money and ended up to, dominate Grace and win it at the end of the Grace. Controlled our post, Dark Zone, all that type of jazz. Ended up winning Grace. Basically, during TNT, Icy attempts Pluto several times, but is packed every single one of those times. They didn't really get too far into the base of Pluto. What ends up happening after that is Lil Deekleek basically was leadered by What the Fuck Vape and his faction, removed everyone from the roster, and ended up disabling their shield. After all this was, settled and figured out, it was a bunch of chaos, but after all this, Pluto ends up rev mid-airing IC and ends up winning the map. Moving on to PvP labs, basically, meatheads have dominated every aspect of PvP. They've grown their lead on PvP top, and they have really just dominated that category of the server. However, Falcon ended up merging with AK-47 and Mortis, getting all their value, and it made a, basically an insurmountable gap on F-top, something that's not going to be able to get, caught up to. With that happening, TNT was enabled. Falcon ended up having a lot more numbers, and not much has happened, since TNT is enabled, but we will keep you updated on what goes on. Moving on to Minecadian, not too much to cover there. Randoms are still dominating F-top. There was, however, a raid event, but Randoms did end up losing that raid event to Sniffers. It didn't really affect F-top much, but Sniffers is just kind of like a bunch of, Soapy Time Null, even some Peppa kids. Like, it's just a random Mod Podge faction that's, just playing for fun. Now moving on to upcoming maps. One map I actually want to highlight. It's a month away, but PvP Labs Nordic Realm. The reason I'm covering this is because it is, more than likely going to be one of the biggest comp maps in recent memory, to be honest. And this map, as well as the maps following that they will run. June 3rd, it's going to be 20 chunk buffers, 2-sec rating, and countering. There's going to be chimney buffers, 40 wall cannon boxes, and it's supposed to be a really big and successful comp map. A lot of people are excited for it. Right now, the presumable comp is going to be Pluto versus AK-47 versus Falcon versus a violent side faction and versus Pandillas. So that's a lot of comp. We haven't seen a 10-man's comp map like this since Archon. A while ago, because Archon hasn't ran a 10-man's map in probably close to a year now. So this should be a pretty big comp map. I'm excited for it. It'll be during the summer, like once it starts, and so we'll have to see what ends up with that. But I will be talking about that map in the next few episodes. It's just updating you with what all is happening with it. And then Lotus MC is also supposed to be releasing this weekend. All right, now moving on to the power rankings. A lot has changed. Once again, these power rankings have been very dynamic the last couple weeks. Regardless, we're going to get into the floaters. Number 1 is going to be Ares. I've talked about them a good bit at the start of the show. They're basically a psycho PvP faction who, dabbled a little bit in comp this past week. Ended up winning one psycho. Gonna give them a little floater position. If they can do some more stuff in comp, they could earn a top 5 spot. And then right with them is Pandillas. They've been a floater for the last couple weeks. They just still can't quite find their way into the top 5, especially now because the top 5 right now is loaded. I don't really see a weak spot in the top 5. Regardless, Pandillas, still trying to find some map wins, and once they can, figure that out, they will certainly find their way into the top 5. Now moving into the top 5, which will be very different and slightly controversial, But at 5, I have IRA. IRA was at number 5 last week. They haven't, I don't think, played a map this week. But, once again, they're at 5 because they're a very good faction. They just play the smaller man's maps. They're probably the best 3-man out there right now. I don't think there's really any denying that. But, they're there because of the factions ahead of them have a bigger roster and, some other, factors are included. But at number 4, we have Pluto. Pluto has come back in full force. This is the real Pluto. This is, the real deal. All their members, or most of their members, have come back to play. And they have played a couple maps this week. They're looking to play the Nordic maps in the future. That and the summer map at Nordic. And so Pluto is going to be at number 4. They can easily find their way into the top few positions over the next few weeks if they can continue to dominate the way they are. Now moving into number 3. This is, a unusual spot for randoms. Randoms I'm going to put at number 3 because I'm trying to keep these rankings as dynamic as possible, as daily based as possible. And randoms lost a raid event to a lesser faction. A faction that wasn't doing too much. I know there was a little bit of teaming or whatnot, but from what I saw, it did not seem like any reason for them to really lose that raid event. It seems like they're they might have gotten a little too cocky about themselves and might have just overlooked it. Regardless, for this week, I'm going to put randoms at number 3, which is going to leave number 2 spot to be Meatheads. Meatheads is going to move ahead of randoms right now. Because of the comp they've been playing, I believe it's better than the comp that randoms are playing on Cadia. And Meatheads right now is dominating them in every aspect except value. Meatheads have honestly dominated the map. They just have not been selling as much and fishing as much. That's really just it. Meatheads have won every single Citadel. They capped almost every Koth after the first couple days. They've really just dominated every aspect of the server except for value. And because of that, at number 1, I'm putting Falcon. They are currently winning PvP labs, which, as much as, people might not want to admit it, if you're winning a server, you're better than the other factions playing at that moment in time. So I'm going to put Falcon at number 1. They've been able to prove that they can certainly get it done and get value up and defend that value as of now. We'll have to see what happens in the future. Regardless, Falcon is at number 1, and as you can see, AK-47 was at the number 2 position last week. they have completely fallen off, and the reason for that is because they merged into Falcon. Merges, I'm not gonna really let multiple factions take up power ranking spots if they merge. And in my opinion, if you merge, that means you can't win on your own, which means you're not as good as other factions. But regardless, those are your top 5: IRA, Pluto, Randoms, Meatheads, and Falcon at number 1. Now moving into MVP of the week. Not really factions based, but a little cool thing. Cypher, a faction that we covered a couple weeks ago. They ended up making Tally, which is Mezoid's faction, on Viper MC rateable. Mezoid actually made a couple videos about them. They might have been cheating, they might have not. We'll see. But regardless, they made Mezoid rateable, which is a cool little thing for the factions community. Now moving on to Clown of the Week. This happened a couple weeks ago. I was going to cover it last week, but I decided to keep it for this week. Basically, Forgot You owed Mindchat some money, and he did not pay him and told him that he had to play labs with him or he wasn't going to pay him. Basically saying, I'm scamming you if you don't play labs with me. Before AK-47 and Falcon merged, this didn't happen, so Mindchats didn't get his money. So a bit of a Clown of the Week moment. Forgot You not paying Mindchats. A little bit of a dick move, but it is what it is. But yeah, if you have any news for next week's episode or Clown of the Week or MVP of the Week submissions, go ahead and make a ticket in our Discord, which is in the description. And also in the comments, make a power rankings top 5 of your list. And I will see y'all next week.